All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. This is iFit Model. We're going to go ahead and go into a new program. Last few weeks, we've been going over the basics of nutrition, the iFit Model basics of nutrition, and we went over a lot of content, but we're going to start a new series this time, and it's going to be the 4 steps to extreme results. Now, I've been doing this program for about 10 years now, and it's proved to have a lot of success. And really, all I wanted to do was create something that was very simple for people to follow, and not have so many rules to success. And so, what we're going to do today is we're going to go over the basic ideology of the program and how simple it can really be. And in the following weeks, we'll go over how you can relate that specifically to exercise, and how you can also implement that with your nutrition program. But this is a program that's not just for exercise and nutrition. This transcends every aspect of your life, and it can go into just if you want to improve your career, and anything you want to improve in your life, it can do it. I am your host, Aaron Zambrano of iFitModel.com, and we're going to go right into the program. So, like I said, one of the main reasons why I wanted to develop something is because, as a young kid, I always just had this desire to become extremely successful, and I wasn't quite sure how I was going to do it. Unfortunately, I didn't have parents growing up. My mother actually died when I was 14, which actually is the inspiration of why I got into the health industry, because she was extremely unhealthy. But my mother and my father divorced when I was really young, so I didn't really have that guidance, that father figure, or even that mother figure in my adult years. And so a lot of the stuff that I had to do, I had to watch other people and read books and listen to people like Tony Robbins and Zig Ziglar and people like that. And I just needed to create something that was really simple for me to understand. I'm a very simple-minded guy, and you can go and you can read something from one person and have 30 different rules of how to become successful. And then you read something else from somebody else and you have 30 different rules there. And next thing you know, you've looked at 5 different people, and now you have 150 rules of how to become successful. So all I wanted to do was package everything that I've learned over the years through my own personal experiences, but also from all the studying that I did, and just make it extremely simple. So I was able to get all this information and bring it down into 4 steps. And, I've been a personal trainer, and I've been certified for a long time. That's actually how I was introduced into the health and fitness industry as a trainer, like many of us are. And through the years, I've kind of gone through the ranks, and now I'm, doing more coaching than anything else. But when I developed this system, I started using it on my clients, and it became extremely successful. And it's the foundation of everything that I've ever done with either my coaching clients, my personal training clients, or just the people I help with their branding, or just that I help with career guidance. So it's been an extremely effective program so far, and I can't wait to share it with you. But again, this is just going to be a very, very simple way of looking at how to become successful. So enough build up, enough of the hype. Let's get right into the program. So like I said, this is going to just be a very easy 4-step program. Now, I suggest that you do everything in this particular order, but sometimes, people want to flip things around, but I don't necessarily think that that's the right way of doing things. But the first step in the program is understanding that whatever change you decide you want to make, it's going to be for a lifetime. A lot of people say, "Oh, I want to be, I want to be a doctor, or I want to be an attorney, or I want to do this." And as soon as they start going into it, they realize that, oh man, this is not really what I want to do, and so they switch jobs or they switch majors. I personally, when I went through college, I was very unsure of what I wanted to do. My first major was broadcast communications, and I was in a school where it didn't really benefit me to be in broadcast communications. And so as I went on, then I changed my major to physical education with a minor in history. And then I changed it to math. And then I changed it back to exercise science and kinesiology. And so I had to go through these processes myself. But really what I needed to do was find what my real passion was, find what it was that I really wanted to do. And I knew at a very young age that I wanted to help people. I wasn't quite sure how I wanted to do it, but I also knew that I absolutely loved to exercise, and I went through my own weight loss transformation, and I just really wanted to share that to people. And I realized that that was really where my passion was. And whenever your passion is there, you're always going to find a way to overcome any obstacle that you come. So, any obstacle that you encounter. So you have to understand that any change that you want to make, you've got to have your full heart and soul behind it. Because if it's not, the minute that you meet resistance, you are going to stop. So the first step in this program is just understanding that the change that you make is going to be over a lifetime. It's a permanent change. And if you can't understand that, then you are going to quit before you really ever get started. There's not one person, there's not one successful person who has ever not had any failures or not had any kind of trials that they've gone through. Every single successful person has encountered failure at some point. And so why were they able to overcome that failure? Well, it's because they knew that the change and the direction that they were going was going to be for a lifetime and not just for that particular moment. So I try to find inspiration from everywhere, and I love to eat, as everybody else does, and I love documentaries. And I watched this documentary on Netflix one night, and it was Jiro Dreams of Sushi. And it's about a gentleman who's 80 years old and who makes sushi for a living. And he's one of the top sushi chefs in all of Japan. And he charges, I don't know, $400, $500 a plate. And he only serves 11 people a day. And they asked him, what is your key to success? And he said, find something that you love and spend the rest of your life trying to perfect it. And so this is basically, he did step number one. He knew that he wanted to make sushi for a living. When he was a young child, he wasn't very privileged, and he was going through all types of different things that he was trying to find a way to kind of just make it in this world. And he just couldn't find that one thing. And then one day he was introduced to making sushi, and he fell in love with it. And now he's 80 years old. He's been practicing for 60 or 70 years. And it's changed his life. And now he's one of the best in the entire world at making sushi. And so this is the type of lifetime change that I'm trying to explain, is you have to understand that if you want to have a weight loss goal, you want to have a fat loss goal, it's not just for a vacation. It's not just for, a fitness competition. It is for a lifetime, and you have to make that commitment that the change that you're going to make is for a lifetime. Now, I've spent a lot of time on that because, to be honest, that's the most important part. If you can't wrap your head around that, you will stop before you ever really get started. And so step number one, understanding that this is going to be a lifetime change. Wrap your head around that. And once you get it, then you're on your way. But you really have to make that commitment to yourself. So that's step number one. It seems like the easiest one of all, but it's actually probably the most difficult for many people. Step number two is actually, it's simple. We can do this in our sleep. What are your goals? First, you have to understand where you want to go. And so, you can sit down and say, hey, I want to, lose 70, 80 pounds. I want to lose 100 pounds. Put your goals out there. Make them as big as you want to make them. A lot of times when I sit down and work with people, I ask them, what do you want to do? And they're like, I want to lose, 5 pounds. And I'm like, okay, but what do you really want to do? And they're like, what I really want is I want to lose, 80 pounds, but, I don't want to, get in over my head. So we're going to start with 5 pounds at first. And so this is the kind of hesitation that a lot of people have, and when you're setting your goals, freak yourself out. Say, I want to lose 80 pounds. I want to lose 100 pounds, or I want to gain 30 pounds of muscle, or whatever the idea is. Set your goals extremely high. And if you don't get there, you know what? You may not reach 80 pounds of weight loss, but you might get to 60. And that's okay. I think a lot of people who want to lose 80 pounds, if they lost 60, they'd be extremely excited about that. So you have to understand what your goals are, and you have to make them measurable. So don't just say, I want to lose weight. Don't just say, I want to tone up. How can you actually measure these things? And, you have to, like, how much weight are you trying to lose? How much body fat are you trying to lose? And these are specific numbers, things that you can actually measure. And that's a really important thing, is have measurable goals. So now that you've done your goals and you got that, and again, that's a fairly easy thing to do. I think we all live thinking about what we want to do, so that's usually a pretty easy step for people to take. Sometimes the hardest part in that is just understanding how do we actually create them to be measurable. And so step number 2 is find out what your goals are. So now we're going to go ahead and go into step number 3. And this one is a little difficult for a lot of people because sometimes we lie to ourselves. You have to be self-aware. So step number 3 in the 4 Steps to Extreme Results program is being self-aware. And what does being self-aware mean? It doesn't mean knowing your surroundings and knowing if there's cops and robbers around you or something. Being self-aware is understanding where you are right now. I give this analogy all the time, but let's say you go to a mall. Okay, and you want to find where, the Apple store is. And so the first thing that you do, if you've never been to that mall before, the first thing that you do is you go find the directory. Most people do. You go find the directory. And the first thing that you look for is the star that says you are here. And so that's basically what being self-aware is about, is trying to understand where you are right now. So once we can understand where you are, we can find that Apple store, and now we can figure out how you need to get there. So step number 2 is knowing your goal. Your goal is the Apple store. Step number 3 is being self-aware, and that's finding where that star is. And so that's all we're trying to do in the self-awareness part. But a lot of people don't know what types of questions to ask themselves of where they are. So let's say we were putting into relation to exercise. Well, our goal is to lose 80 pounds. Well, where am I now? Well, right now my weight is 250 pounds. I'm making up a number here. Okay. My weight is 250 pounds and I want to lose 80 pounds. And so that's a way that you've now made yourself self-aware. Well, what is your other goal? I want to lose 80 pounds. Okay, so how am I going to get there? What are different things that I can do to get there? How many days a week am I exercising now? And so you have to ask yourself those questions. So if you're exercising 0 times right now, then say I'm not exercising at all. How many meals am I eating? Well, you have to know what your nutrition looks like. And sometimes these are questions that any professional is going to ask you. That's why a lot of people go see a personal trainer or go see a nutritionist or go see a health and wellness coach, is because they don't know, in a sense, how to really look at themselves. Now, on the flip side, there are people out there who think that they know everything of what's going on with themselves, and they feel like they're able to self-diagnose themselves. And although they probably have a better feel than somebody who has no clue of what's going on with themselves, they may have a better clue. Sometimes having that much knowledge is actually a negative thing, because you feel you can't learn anymore and you feel like nobody else can help you. But I always say it every single day that somebody comes in and has that type of attitude. I say, if you're not seeing the results that you want to see, then you're not doing something right. And that at the end of the day, that's what matters, the results that you're seeing. So if you're not getting the results that you want, your formula is messed up. Yeah, you may have some right things in the right place, but your entire formula is messed up and it's not working with you to give you the results that you want. So understand that you do need help, and understand that you do need to break yourself down, and you need to be self-aware. So we've figured out, first thing to do is, the first step is understanding that the change that you're going to make is for a lifetime. Step number 2, knowing what your goals are. And number 3, being self-aware. Sometimes you have to be extremely honest with yourself. Tony Robbins says a really big thing. He says, in order for you to create change, you have to be disturbed. And so we've all done it. We've all seen a picture of ourselves, online, whether it's Facebook, whether it's Twitter, or whether it's Instagram. And we're like, oh my goodness, I look terrible. I hear it all the time. I ask people, what's your motivation to come in and talk to me? And they're like, well, I saw a picture of myself at this wedding, and I didn't realize, how much weight I've gained. And it was really disturbing. And at that point, I needed to contact somebody because I knew I needed help. I didn't realize that I was that far off. And so sometimes we have to be really disturbed before we make that change. And then you go in and you talk to somebody, and they help you become a little more self-aware of what's going on with yourself. So step number 4 is the part that a lot of people have a lot of really big issues with, and that's taking baby steps to your goal. Okay. So I have somebody who comes in, and this has just happened the other day. I had somebody who came in and they said, Aaron, I want to lose weight. And I said, fantastic. Well, tell me this. Tell me how many days a week you're working out. And the guy's like, I'm not working out at all. I'm like, okay, so you want to lose 50 pounds and you're not working out at all. Okay, not a problem. And I said, okay, so how many times a week do you want to work out? He's like, I want to work out 5 days a week. And I said, okay, so you're going to go from 0 days a week and you haven't worked out in 5 years. And now you want to work 5 days a week. And that's what that's what you plan on doing. He's like, yeah, I'm going to come in, I'm going to work 5 days a week and I'm going to lose all this weight. And I'm not sitting here going to talk somebody down from shooting high, because I always talk about shooting high, but I'm also very realistic and seen it a million times that we set these goals that are extremely high. We don't have any short-term goals, or we don't have any baby steps. And people just fail because they're not achieving their goal right away. So I was like, okay, and this gentleman's name is Gary. And I said, okay, Gary, let's see how it works. So I went through his assessment, did the whole thing, and he was on his way. Well, the first week he came in and he worked out as hard as he possibly could because he was so gung-ho. The second day he came in and he was just a little slow. He was extremely sore from working out so hard. Third day he came in, he was even slower because he did legs on Monday and then did upper body on Tuesday. And now both his upper and lower body were so sore. When it was time for him to do legs again on Wednesday, he was just moving at a snail's pace. Well, Thursday comes around, he's a no-show. Friday comes around, he's a no-show. Well, I've never seen Gary back in the gym again. And I called him up and I said, Gary, where have you been? Why haven't I seen you? He's like, my goal was to work out 5 days a week, and I went in there 3 days and I didn't get 5 days. And the second week, I didn't get 5 days and I just felt like a failure. And, I just don't want to do this anymore. And I said, Gary, you have to understand, you went from working out 0 days a week to trying to work out 5 days a week. That's not very realistic. Yeah, that's a great goal to have, but you have to allow yourself time to get there. There's all kinds of studies that say it takes 21 days to create a habit. So why don't you come in 3 times a week for 21 days straight or 3 weeks straight and see how that works for you? And then at that point, once you're doing 3 days a week, then you can work your way up to 4 days a week. And then once you're doing 4 days a week for at least 3 weeks, then you can work yourself up to 5 days a week. And then when you get there, now you've just reached your goal, and it took you 6 weeks to get there. As opposed to now, you're not getting your goals at all. So these are baby steps is extremely important, just to have a realistic approach. And you'll know when it's time to increase the number of times that you want to work out. You will be asking for it. But when you feel like it's a job, when you feel like it's something you have to do versus something you want to do, that's when it's not fun anymore. That's when you just don't look forward to doing it. But if you can give yourself a realistic approach to going into the gym and working out a certain number of days a week, then you're going to be better off. So I always tell people, if you're working out 0 days a week right now and your goal is to work 5 days a week, then a baby step in the right direction is 1 day a week. And I know you might sit there and say, 1 day a week, what is 1 day a week in the gym going to actually do for my weight loss? Well, it's probably not going to do much for you right now, but it'll do a lot for you when you're doing it 2 days a week. Because the first step, they say every marathon starts with 1 step, and that's very true. Every 5 day a week program starts with at least 1 day a week. And once you're consistent with that, you can move up to 2 days a week. Once you're consistent up with that, you can do 3 days a week. Now, people say, well, I want to go in 3 days a week. I can do 3 days a week now. Well, if you can do 3 days a week now, go right ahead. Go to it. Yeah, I say baby steps because there's a lot of things, exercise, sometimes people can jump in and go 3 days a week. But there's other things like nutrition, for example, and we'll get more into detail on that. In nutrition, people literally have to take even smaller steps when it comes to nutrition, because that's by far the hardest thing to do. So even though I say go work out 1 day a week, if you can do 3 days a week, then just go ahead and jump to 3 days a week. But don't be disappointed in yourself whenever you've only gone to the gym twice that week. Because remember, twice a week is better than what you were doing before, which is 0 times per week. And I can go on and on and on about forgiving yourself, being patient with the process, and all this stuff. But these are the basic 4 steps to extreme results. Number 1, understand that whatever change that you make is going to be a lifetime change. Number 2, understand what your goals are. Create measurable goals. Number 3, become self-aware. Know where you are right now. And number 4, create baby steps to help you get there. And that's where you really create the plan. So if we go back and we look at the analogy of the mall directory, what we're doing is we understand that we want to go to the Apple store. That's, I guess you can say that's your lifetime change. I'm going to make that commitment to go to the Apple store. That's why I came to the mall. That's why I drove from my house to the mall, spent 20 hours looking for for parking spots. But that change is I got out of my bed. I went to the Apple store. The next thing you did is like, okay, I know I want to go to the Apple store. So number 3 was, where am I now? So you found that star on the map. So now that you found that star, and now that you found where the Apple store is on the directory, now you can create your map to help you get to where your goals are, or help you get to that Apple store. So you say, okay, well, I need to go down and I need to go past the Guest store. I need to go past the Louis Vuitton store, and then I need to make a left and go downstairs. And now I've arrived at the Apple store, and I just went through a step-by-step process of how to get to the Apple store. And so here you are, you've gone through the 4 steps to extreme results. What we're going to do next week is we're going to go and take a deeper dive into it and understand how we can actually apply this towards exercise. And so we'll take a deeper dive into it. You'll get a better understanding for it. And so today, all I wanted to do was just introduce you to the program, introduce you how it works and how simple it really is. 4 steps, lifetime change. Know that that's what you're doing. Number 2, know your goals. Number 3, be self-aware. And number 4, have baby steps to achieve your goal. And that's going to wrap up the program. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Aaron Zambrano of iFit Model. Thank you so much for listening today. We will see you next week.